everybody wants a healthy back, good mobility and no pain as we get older. And that's what we're going into today. Something quick you can do to make that happen. Now, this all came about after a patient I'd seen in his 80s came to see me about some knee pain. And during the assessments, looking at his movements, I noticed that he had really good mobility of his back, like the best I'd ever seen of anyone at that age. So I asked him, what's your secret? And he told me that due to having back pain in his 30s, every morning since then, for the past 45 years, he does some simple back exercises every morning. And I'll go through exactly the exercises that he does later in the video. Now we know that movement and exercise is good for the back. Motion is lotion. But it got me thinking, what exercises will be the ultimate ones for this? Something you could do every morning that's quick to do, so you're more likely to do it, and something easy enough that you can stick to it. Because as we know, consistency is key. So I chose these 3 exercises. Exercise number 1, downward dog to child pose to cobra. Okay, this is a bit of a cheat because it's not just one exercise. However, we're trying for the ultimate here, and each of the movements has a really interesting way that it can help. The downward dog part is great because for one, it gets us into thoracic extension. In this day and age, we spend so much time in flexion. Everything's in front of us. We sit at computers, we're on our phones, we're driving, we're watching TV. And one of the best ways to get into thoracic extension is something simple like reaching overhead and looking up, which we just never really do anymore. Back in those original days, we would have been looking up at the trees for food and reaching for it, but no more. We would have been looking up at the sky and nature, but that's very limited. We can counteract this though with the downward dog. It also helps to stretch that sciatic nerve, which is only a good thing. With any of these exercises though, you're only going into a comfortable range, not forcing through it, which might end up hurting you. Like if I was going to do the splits, which I can't, but if I was trying to, I wouldn't force myself into the movement. I would tease myself into it gradually over a longer period of time. And that's exactly the same thing you want to do with these exercises if you're struggling to get into that range. Remember, tease it, don't force it. From the downward dog, you're moving into the child's pose. A really nice stretch of the back muscles and will help with mobility. You will then flow into the cobra, a nice lumbar extension and an exercise commonly used to help with disc issues. From this, you'll flow back into the downward dog and keep repeating. For each of the exercises shown here, to keep it to around 5 minutes in total, do 45 seconds on each and do 2 sets. So in this one, you're going to do the 45 seconds repeating this flow. So that moves us on to exercise number 2, which is a sprinter stretch with rotation. This is a great movement to add rotation into the spine. You're going to start on all fours. You're going to bring one foot forward in line with the same shoulder. You'll put the opposite hand on the floor to help with stability and balance. And you'll reach that other hand up towards the ceiling, also looking up in that direction as well. You'll then swap to the other side. If lifting that knee up off the floor of the back leg, that will just help to further stretch the hip flexor. Also so important, again, if spending so much time sitting in the day. Exercise number 3 is extensor loading. Now, another important thing to be thinking about, as well as keeping the back mobile, is trying to keep it strong. A classic for this would be something like deadlifts, maybe some kettlebell swings, but you're going to be going light for this. It's more about the movement and getting the blood flowing. You're not trying to hit any PBs here. Now, obviously for a lot of people, it's not like you're gonna be able to roll out of bed and just start deadlifting. So if you don't have access to any of that equipment or you don't go to the gym in the morning, what you can do instead is something called swimming. I don't mean in the pool, but an exercise that you can do to help with strengthening that back. You'll be laid on your front on the floor and you're gonna be lifting one arm up and the opposite leg. You're gonna hold for a second, let that lower down and then repeat on the other side. And you're just gonna keep alternating this each side. You'll be starting your morning well, getting your brain in gear, coordinating this as well. So they'll be really good exercises to do. If you want something much simpler, then what this patient has been doing for 45 years follows a very similar approach in terms of getting the back moving, but they are much simpler. So if you find some of these exercises too hard, it might be a good idea to start on this and then build into them. So what he was doing, he would be touching the floor and then reaching up to the ceiling, repeating that movement for a minute or so. Then he'd do side bends, just moving side to side. He was doing this a little bit more aggressively than I'd suggest, but you know, maybe that's the thing that helped. And then he finished off doing rotations side to side, just moving one hand to one way and then one hand to the other. So very simple. So if you're needing something just as simple as that, something is better than nothing. If you're wanting other ideas to help strengthen those extensor muscles in the back, then check out this video here, which is the alternatives to the deadlift that you can do in the gym. And I hope this video was useful for you. And if you're wanting us to cover any other body parts, just let us know.